Setting up your meeting. Cool. So far, so good. We're
Okay.
going on to YouTube. Cool. That's what it says anyway. We'll figure this out.
Okay.
Hello. Okay, here we are. We are live. Wonderful. Here we go. Hello, everybody out there in live streaming land. We are trying something very new today. This is a live stream with Jen. She is a psychotherapist. You all know that I have been a psychotherapist in the past for many, many years. Today, I wanted to have Jen on so that we today could talk about therapy in the world as we are experiencing it. I would love to pick your brain a little bit here, Jen, and talk about what's going on in the world of therapy. I would also like to hear a little bit about your personal experiences. I'm going to put something. Is it okay if I say something a little controversial right up front? Does that work for you? You comfortable with that?
Yep.
Sure.
Go for it.
Um, I'm going to be careful here. I'm going to be careful. I think that therapy has a very important place in our society. I think that therapy, as it is meant to resolve diagnoses, as it's meant to work on huge issues like schizophrenia, people suffering with psychotic challenges, people who have nowhere else to turn and their mental state is vastly disrupted. I think that people who have nowhere to go and they're just really beginning that journey of psychology and understanding, and they fit specifically a core diagnosis that they cannot get out of, and it's causing that disruption in their life, right? As
Right.
the DSM says, you have to have significant disorder where you are struggling to function in relationships and or struggling to function in work or in academics in school, like some major disruptions in life that psychology is leading to. I think that therapy has a great point there. Wonderful. That's the role therapy was originally designed for back when Freud created it. Arguably, some of his statements were not great back then, but it had this role of when nothing else is working, therapy can help, right? That was the idea. What I've seen, and what I'd love to pick your brain on here, is it seems like therapy in the modern world has almost become more of a religion. I'll say it a different way. It's as if therapy has replaced religion for a lot of people, but it's also replaced mentorship. It has replaced friendships. It has replaced social community. It has replaced almost family for many, many people. I know some people have said, my therapist she's like a second mom to me. And that I don't, I personally am very much against that. And I think that that's a
Yeah.
horrible thing that's happening. If that's the case, that is a vast breach of that professional relationship. I remember in school, they hammered into me dual relationships are wrong,
Yep.
fostering dependency is wrong. But I'm wondering a little bit if my schooling was just very unusual compared to most other therapists, or if the industry is rewarding this bad behavior in a lot of therapists, or even if it's not the therapist's fault. Maybe it's society itself crafting a new religion out of therapy, and a lot of
Right.
therapists are just along for the ride. Pause for breath here because I brought you on because you are in the field right now working with people. What are you seeing in the field? Is this making sense to you? Is this something you've seen too?
Yeah, thank you, Adam, for having me. I have seen this and I am seeing this. It's really interesting because I was also taught regarding dual relationships, multiple relationships, as well as countertransference and all those other factors and pieces that can get really, really blurry there. With that being said, I do have people crossing those lines at times or saying similar comments, like replacing family, for example, and then I have to kind of like put on my ethical cap and remind them about the nature of the relationship. But it's challenging because, they're opening up to us. They're in a really bad place typically when they come and see us as therapists. And so it's not really hard for the line to be crossed, as well as on the other end of the spectrum with the therapist as well, where you have to really, really be mindful of your own countertransference and what's going towards that client essentially. So I hope that kind of answered the question a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're one of the good therapists who's ethical, you're thinking about this problem. You don't want to become the everything for your clients, right? You want people to be mindful of that border so that they can go out and do other things. What other things are you encouraging your clients, or do you want them to go do instead of fixating on you as the sole savior in their life?
That's a good question. So I encourage them to integrate the skills that we're learning together in the sessions to do it outside in the real world because realistically, they're only seeing me an hour each week, let's say, if that, sometimes it's biweekly. The skills are going to have to be transferred. So I'm encouraging them to do that. If there's social anxiety, meet with people, exposure therapy outside of the session, for example, building and rebuilding relationships with family members, for example, joining social support groups, whatever that looks like. But my goal is for them to integrate their skills in the outside life so that the whole point is they become their own therapist and they don't need me anymore. So that's the principal philosophy I try to operate on. Yeah.
What you just said right there, I love that. So they don't need me anymore. Fostering non-dependence, fostering independence in your clients. When I went through school, they told us this was a moral imperative for the therapist, is to foster independence from you. Now, out in the field, it seems like the industry, let me say it a different way. I think that society itself has degraded in many ways so that people don't have community. People don't have those close families that they should have. Most people don't even
Right.
have core family. Many people no longer have friends. I know the research among millennials from ages 25 to 45 now shows that 65% of them report loneliness every single day, with 35% of them reporting overwhelming loneliness that leads to pretty severe depression symptoms. And it's tagged exactly in a loneliness for them. That's the core element of that. So the many people are missing these pieces. And I think a lot of people have tapped therapy as their saving, almost escapism from the world. Like, this is my safe home I go to. So many people don't even have a home to go to where they feel safe, but you can go to a therapist's office, you can nestle in. I remember I could tell that I could tell that someone had been a client of mine for too long when they'd come in and they'd say like, "Oh, someone moved my pillow," and I'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! No, 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 no! This is not your living room. This is an office where you are getting help. So where's your real home? Where is your pillow? Where does that actually sit? And how can we make sure you're getting that?" That was a core piece for me. Was if they got way too comfortable in the office, this isn't meant to be a home away from home. This is a place where you come and get work done, and then you go somewhere else so that you can get what you need elsewhere. For me, that was a big element. How can you tell someone has been in therapy too long or is getting a little too comfortable and they're starting to get too dependent?
A great question. I mean, I've had some clients come to me and say, like, what's up? And, talking to me on a casual level or like less formality, for example. And I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. We have to maybe revisit the ethics of this or like look at the whole goal of therapy, essentially, in the therapeutic alliance. I just feel like a lot of us have this outdated vision of therapy. You think of Freud, like you stated, people on a couch, longevity, and psychodynamic based therapy, which really isn't really prevalent right now. So a lot of it really is psychoeducation on the nature of the therapeutic alliance, what the relationship looks like, for example, and continually checking in with myself, being conscious, mindful, and continually updating my clients because some of them will jokingly say, and this is another way I know, I don't want to leave you. What am I going to do without you? And and I have to validate the emotions that arise with this, but then I have to really guide them on the right path here that the whole goal is to spread your wings and not need me one day and you're going to be your own therapist. So there are some slippery slopes there, that's for sure.
100%. A lot of people that are listening to this right now might be thinking like, "Oh, how awful." Like your clients are telling you, to both of us, your clients are telling you they feel so safe with you. They want to learn about you, they want to talk to you, and you're pushing back on them and putting up this boundary. I would just feel so uncomfortable if my therapist did that. And a lot of people are going to say that. And let's pause for a moment and remember, what is a therapist supposed to be? What is a therapist supposed to be? Well, by definition, in our training and what insurance tells us what we're supposed to be limited to, and what the
Yeah.
field tells us is actually harmful for clients if we don't limit to. A therapist is designed to be a paid professional. We cannot accept services and goods in exchange for it. We're actually required to accept money, for one thing. A lot of licensing boards
Exactly.
have that in there. You can't trade with your therapist for services. Um, you're supposed to be a paid professional with a barrier between you so that it does not foster dependence. If somebody is friends with their therapist, what does this turn into? Well, in many cases, exploitation, intentional or otherwise. You're now farming that person's feelings for you for cash, whether you mean to or not. Most therapists don't mean to. But this person is now on a subscription friend basis with you. They now have to pay money to feel safe with you, to feel like you are still in their life. They can't emotionally separate from you. So they are now on a subscription payment system.
Yeah.
That is not good, you guys. When you look at oxytocin bonding, when you look at vasopressin bonding, when you look at serotonin production, all of the social elements that come into those hormones and those neurotransmitters, how humans need these to be functional, people need to be going out, just like Jen, just like you said, like, who else can you be talking to? Who else should you be fostering relationships with? A person shouldn't be in therapy for 10 years and say, what am I going to do without you? A person should be in your therapist in your office, a couple of months, and then say, man, I can't wait to really dive deeper into my relationship with my grandfather, with my aunt, with this person that I'm talking to, this other mentor that I'm working with that I've met, this person in my industry, my spouse. You should have so many other people that they're excited to talk to, that they don't need you anymore. They should feel like, okay, when is our relationship up? I know I have succeeded when clients are like, okay, Adam, what is the plan? How are we getting through it? How many sessions is it going to take? And I'm really excited to get through that. I just want to make sure we're on track. That's how I can tell I've done my job as a professional, not because they don't like me, but because they remember that my role is not supposed to be an indefinite one. Jen, I don't want to say this. What have you seen the best benefits from when they come in, they don't have friends, they don't have family, they don't maybe have someone, and you are that initial person for them. And many times we are, right? That's what leads to a lot of this. We're that first person who's accepted them. We're the first person they've been able to talk to like this. We're the first person they feel like cares. We are, because we're trained to and we're paid to. We're the first person, though, that they've experienced this bonding with. What has been helpful for you to kind of help them understand that this is just supposed to be the beginning and they're supposed to launch from here? What do you do that helps foster that independence?
That's a great question as well. I actually try to utilize that bond though regarding the modeling piece where, like you said, this is the nature of it and this is how it should be, of course, and reminding them of that, but utilizing that model to say, hey, like, these are how you're building the skills here with me right now in a safe, controlled environment. But the whole goal, try it in the real world, right? And actually start to integrate that and then also have it have transference in addition to sustainability, essentially. So I do foster and encourage them to have other relationships, and some of them extend to church support, religious support, mentors, spiritual coaches, for example. And a lot of them are there trying to rebuild with family. So I do try to encourage that, and I do my best to kind of facilitate that the best I can. And a lot of them are really thankful for it.
That is right there. I think in many cases the role of a therapist, yes, to work on diagnoses and also as that safety net for when somebody has nothing else. But it is a moral and ethical imperative of a therapist to then point that person at other people, especially if that means that the therapist loses the cash payment from this subscription person, right? I remember that's a problem, but we should not be farming people. Right. We should not be farming people. And I don't just say this to individual therapists. I say this to the insurance companies. I say this to the whole pharmaceutical complex. I remember working at my last clinic, the pharmaceutical companies would come in. It was illegal for them to just like buy extravagant lunches for the med providers. So they got around that by buying extravagant lunches for the entire clinic. They'd have catered lunches. We'd probably have 2 or 3 of them a week from different companies who then be handing out pamphlets for medication. I remember I'd say, I'm not a med provider. And they'd say, no, 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 you should still, your clients can still benefit from these meds. You can hand out pamphlets for us. Just put them on your desk, and trying to get us to market their things in our offices for them. It's a whole complex, you guys. I remember. And Jen, I don't know how much work you've done with county people, but we had a system where people could come in, they'd pay zero, they couldn't afford anything coming in, and then the county would pay us half rate for the hour for the therapists, and then because of that, the county covered everything psychologically for most of these people who are low income people. So we got paid half rate as therapists. Cool. I was happy to work with the population, so it didn't matter to me. But
Right.
what would happen was the insurance companies would then bill out, and the pharmaceutical companies could just have an endless blank paycheck. So they would charge sometimes $1,000 per pill for medications, for psych meds for these people. So then they were incentivized with kickbacks to then pay out and incentivize the med providers. Some of my clients would be on 10 medications, and daily their pill was $1,000 for each pill. So 10 grand per day the county was paying out to the pharmaceutical companies through this farming system, plus kickbacks, plus et cetera. So it really is a structure to keep people on. And one of the clinics that I worked at, I remember they were fairly angry at me because the board of directors, it was a for-profit company, got really mad that my client turnover was so high. So they said, "Why are you chasing people out?" And I said, "I'm not. I'm resolving their diagnoses, and they're actually very happy. I had one of the highest client satisfaction rates in the whole clinic." And I said, I'm resolving their issues quickly and getting them back into their relationships. And they said, "That's bad for business. We don't do that here. If they want to keep talking to you, let them. Find reasons to keep talking to them. There is never enough reasons. There's always reasons to keep talking to you. You know, you can expand their diagnosis. You can hold it on to it for a little bit longer." And massive, massive ethical breaches. That's one reason I gave up my license and I coach now. Um, to the people out there who might be listening, Jen, to the people out there who are in therapy right now, maybe they've been with the same therapist for 2, 3, 4 years. Let's just assume their diagnosis, their original diagnosis, is largely resolved, or they've really been on that diagnosis for 3, 4, 5 years, and let's assume that they've plateaued quite a bit and they're not achieving results. I get a lot of people come to me 4 or 5 therapists in kind of thing, and nothing has changed. If you could say one thing to people, knowing that this is not medical advice, this is not healthcare advice, just maybe a word of encouragement, what might you encourage people to do if they're feeling plateaued in therapy and it's been 4 years? What would you tell them?
I mean, I would tell them you have the right to, be assertive and question the goal here and question the goal not only within yourself, but with your therapist as well. Like, what is the remaining goal? What have we resolved? What are we continuing to resolve? And if that goal has been met, and most likely it has, because, with conditions like major depressive disorder, for example, they're episodic, right? They're chronic. Like, it's never going to be cured or go away completely. You have to have the tools to integrate, and at any point you can re-enter therapy. So just check in with yourself. What is the goal? If the goal is met and it's being met or it was resolved, maybe it wasn't, let's say, but then if someone else can actually satisfy that beyond the diagnoses, I would encourage you to seek, mentorship elsewhere because maybe this person is just becoming a pillar or replacement for something else that you need in your life outside of therapy, if that makes sense.
I love that. I love that. What's the most successful recovery that you see for people as far as like building relationships out there? What's the first relationship that people might need to build that they don't have? What's the most common one?
Honestly, I want to say partnership and companionship with a spouse, to be quite honest, because a lot of people just don't know how to do conflict right, nor do they know how to repair, and nor do they know about attachment styles, really, to be quite honest. That's like the number one. I sometimes feel like I'm doing couples counseling with many of my individual clients, to be honest with you. So that's probably the number one right there.
Is it that they have someone and it's really not going well because one or both of them lack skills, or is it that they're single or they're cycling on a bunch of partners and they don't have one person?
These tend to be married individuals actually who are really struggling to kind of have the skills to repair and the skills to communicate, to be quite honest, in addition to having children together. And that's what I'm seeing more than anything. And I feel again that I'm doing a lot of couples work. I'm doing what I can, but a lot of them are really misinformed when it comes to attachment style or not even informed at all. So I'm trying to bring all of that in, the psychoeducation so that they do have the skills to repair or to rebuild or to formulate a relationship that maybe they didn't even have to begin with their spouse. It's amazing, really.
Absolutely. No, I see much the same happening over here. I got a lot of couples come in, or a lot of singles come in, individuals, I should say. They're married, and it's like they say, "I don't know what to do. It's been years of frustration. We're stuck. I don't," I'm like, "This is a skill. Like, this is really just a skill. We're just going to teach you the skill. It takes a couple of weeks, a couple sessions or something. And by the end of it, they're super happy because they finally resolved something that's haunted them for 10, 15 years. It's amazing how many people are missing those skills, but it's also amazing how many of them have gone to 4 couples therapists, 3 or 4 couples
Wow.
therapists, and this was never resolved. Um,
See that a lot.
yeah. What do you think is the biggest shortcoming in couples therapists? I'll share my opinion in a moment, but I want to hear you professionally on the ground. What's the biggest shortcoming with a lot of couples therapists? Why does it fail so many couples?
I feel like the lack of training and the lack of being seasoned is actually a big one, to be quite honest, because when we go to school for mental health counseling and professional counseling, there's really no specialty or, specialized training. It is really generalized. The training comes additionally after schooling, for example, right? So a lot of couples, counselors will kind of classify themselves as such, but I feel like they're more individual based and therefore they fall into the role of, well, a lot of my clients will come to me and say, she took his side, or like, I was crying the whole session and she didn't say anything. So it's, they're falling into a role where they feel like they're not being heard by their couples counselor because of the sides being taken, let's say, because a lot of them just lack that training, I feel, to be couples based.
Lacking the training, I think, is a big thing. It takes 6 years to get your master's degree, and then I don't know how long it took you. It took me almost 3 full years of apprenticeship under clinician, licensed clinicians, to then get my license. So it was 9 years, and then to come out of that, that 3 years taught me quite a lot. But what I saw, I was a licensed marriage and family therapist, so we should have been specialized. We got a few extra classes and some additional training, but I remember coming out thinking, how am I going to help couples? Like, this is like terrifying. What am I going to do? And the first few couples
Mhm.
that just wanted to scream at each other in session, and you're sitting there like, how do I intrude? What do I say? And the work you have to go through to get that. And I saw so many of my marriage and family therapists, LMFTs, my colleagues drop out and say, I will never work with couples. I remember most of the clinics I worked at, most of the LMFTs had a no couples policy. And then the
Wow.
clinic directors would come and say, you guys are the ones trained for couples. Why won't we need couples work? And nobody at the clinic wanted to work with couples. Like, it was, I remember seeing it again and again and again because so many people are intimidated or they hate it. It's exhausting. It's stressful. And then when they
Mhm.
do, they walk in with those biases. They walk in. I'd love to get your take on this. The reason I think that couples therapy fails so many couples is this element right here. And I heard this years back, and it changed the way that I work with couples. Was so many times couples come in, a male and a female couple, traditional pairing, and the woman is more articulate than the man. She's able to articulate her concerns better. And she usually goes first. The man usually defers her and says, you go ahead, you go first. She launches on this very articulate description of her feelings, her frustrations, the problems. She's been saving this up. She's been preparing it for 3 weeks, this specific speech, not to manipulate on purpose. It's not malicious. She's trying to give it her best. And she
Mhm.
usually has been to therapy herself before. The man usually has not. And the therapist sits and listens to this very articulate therapy language monologue about exactly what she's feeling and exactly what her frustrations are. And then the therapist turns to the man or woman, turns to the man and says, okay, now what's going on with you? And the guy's like, blindsided. The first thing out of his mouth is, well, I don't really agree with some of the things you said there. And so instantly it turns into a hostile experience where the therapist is like, well, you're invalidating her experience. And then the woman's like dabbing her eyes, crying. A lot of that natural inclination to be a little more protective of women usually starts to kick in, or a woman might sympathize with her more. Men especially sympathize with women more quite often. And then the guy's like trying to play defense against what he feels like are these wrong statements. So then it doesn't turn into him sharing his experience. It turns into him trying to play defense. Now everybody in the room has to say, well, can you see how you might be doing this and making her feel this way? And it just turns into this big snowball experience against the guy over and over and over. And what's weird about this is, yes, the men hate it, but a lot of the women hate this too. The women don't want to walk into a situation where the therapist just like starts kicking the husband while he's laying on the ground. Most women want to come in and actually get help and solutions. And a
Yes.
lot of the women are the ones that terminate couples therapy because it feels useless and it just feels like a bashing session on the husband. A lot of women are the ones that shop around to different couples therapists and eventually usually end up with like a really seasoned, like you said, really seasoned couples therapist or a really seasoned couples coach who's going to be a lot more directive. I have to market that I'm not going to take sides. I have to like tell people that right before they'll even come in the door because they're so used to the therapist like beating on the husband. You've seen this. What is something that maybe therapists should be doing, or maybe that coaches can be doing differently, in your opinion? Or even what do you do differently so that you make sure you don't take sides? Because I know you don't. What do you do different that doesn't take sides with when the husband is maybe not as articulated?
Yeah, because I do see that often, or I hear that often from those I work with, and it's awful because then you're not getting the help you need, you're dropping out, and your association with couples therapy just kind of goes down, unfortunately, and therefore you won't seek help. It's a whole big thing. I try to stay up to date regarding education and neuroscience and biology, and even societal conditioning and roles of men and women, what that looks like. Men think more logically, biologically, right? And women tend to be more emotionally driven biologically. I feel like those differences are key in how you're going to communicate or guide the couple together and the type of psychoeducation and skills you're going to provide. Even men's mental health societally, right? And the conditioning we see and just how they're kind of like socialized and such. I think you have to have that information to guide you and to pass on to the couple when it comes to conveying skills and communication styles and even the attachment style, for example. I think that would go tremendously a long way.
Let me ask you, you just said something very interesting, but let me ask you again, maybe like a controversial question. I don't want to get you in too much trouble, but I think we can get to the right amount of trouble here on this channel. Um, there's a sense out there right now that um, a lot of women go to therapy and they get over validated in therapy. They get right, the therapist listens to those feelings and over validates them. No, you should think about this and feel it's right that you feel this. You should really lean into those feelings, push into these irrational anxieties, really linger and wallow in those weird fears that you have, right? And it's this encouragement to just saturate in those feelings. And then it's an encouragement to, you need to be heard. If they don't hear you, they don't care about you. And then she goes home to her husband. If this is individual therapy, she goes home to her husband or boyfriend, or finds a new boyfriend. And what does she do? Well, she uses the emotional language she's been using in therapy that's been massively validated. And then she says, my fears, I need to completely collapse into these feelings. And if someone doesn't understand what I'm saying, it's because they don't care. So then she uses very emotional language with her husband. If here on this channel, I'm the attachment specialist, I focus on attachment. If he's more avoidant, even if he's ethically avoidant, emotional language is going to confuse him, if not like almost set off alarm bells. So he's going to not know what's happening. And because he doesn't know what she's saying, it's not measurable. Like, I need to feel loved. He's going to say, that's weird and confusing. I don't even know what you mean. Like, I'm trying everything I can to make you feel loved. Yeah, but I don't. Well, I'm trying. Yeah, but I don't feel love. Well, how does that happen? Like, well, what do you need? Well, if you loved me, you should understand what it means to make me feel loved. And the therapist, I feel, has played a massive role in over validating this. I think therapists are failing a lot of women. I'll turn this over to you. What are your thoughts? Are we failing a generation of women in teaching them that they shouldn't have to meet other people where they are, that those people should come to where they are? Are we failing women this way?
I mean, I could see that because we're heavily trained in validation and active listening and all those motivational interviewing skills, essentially. So I feel like that does perpetuate the cycle. She'll go home, utilize that language, expect mind reading, let's say, and then, frustration will be on both sides because no one is communicating properly because the cycles aren't being broken, for example. So I am seeing a lot of that. I really think that everyone has a different language of love. And I think that when it comes to validation, essentially, it's about being able to see the person's perspective, not necessarily agreeing with the irrational component or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Doesn't mean I agree, but I can validate you in that capacity. Now, what can we do as a team? Because I'm also seeing a lot of like I versus I or me versus you instead of the we and the team collectively. Um, but I am seeing a lot of mismatch being perpetuated when it comes to emotional and logic language. There are the men and women specifically and things of that sort. And I try to steer away. I try to give validation, but I also try to kind of educate those differences so we could break those cycles.
Yeah, I love that. I think so much of our society, we have started to equate um, lack of validation, not even lack of validation, lack of agreement. We've started to equate lack of agreement with violence in our society. And this is not a political statement. This is in general. If you don't agree with me, you're committing violence against me. If you don't validate my feelings as real, right? Not that if you don't validate that I'm having them, but if you don't agree that my feelings are real and true, that is committing a horrific violent act against me. I think we've got two generations now raised and infantilized in therapy to an extent that I think a lot of the therapists, I just don't think we're prepared for it. I think that therapists are sometimes overly compassionate. A lot of very compassionate and even wounded healers get into this business. As you know, we've both seen our colleagues who get in and just
Yeah.
almost do too much. They enable because they're not properly handling their own business. So there's that countertransference, like you mentioned. and they're infantilizing, I think, society. We are now looking at the fruits of an infantilized, over therapized society. I think that people need more, well, tough, tough helpers like you, who push back, tough helpers like me who push back and say, okay, I get what you're feeling. This is why that feeling is actually going to hurt you and work against you. So
Right.
let's not turn off the feeling, but let's shift things so that you can feel a different way. And let's help you understand how you are supposed to be optimized. And let's get you there. That people need mentors. They need tougher helpers. And I just don't think therapy as a field right now is providing that. Largely because that humanistic theory that has really crept in, especially in the last 40 to 50 years, it really seems to have transformed the field for the bad. The idea that the client knows what's best, the client is the expert. I think people are coming to us because you're supposed to be the expert, not them. I think that again, that infantilizing and over validating is ruining so many lives, so many marriages. I've seen marriages just get ripped apart from a therapist telling the person, hey, you know what, you don't feel like staying in this marriage, don't. Who cares? Like, you've waited long enough. They haven't read your mind. If they did, if they loved you, they'd read your mind, they'd care. You're totally right. You should definitely leave. You should definitely go find somebody else. In fact, don't even find one person. Go on Tinder, find 5 or 6 people. And it turns out the therapist has just went through a nasty divorce themselves and is doing exactly the same thing, or is living vicariously through that client. All
Yeah.
too many times this happens. So what do you think might be, and I'm not here to, sweep therapy under the rug and say therapy is dead, let's kill it. It has a very important place, like we talked about. Diagnoses in particular, like people with psychotic challenges, they need someone to reality test that with them. We're experts in abnormal psychology. People who have specific challenges and maybe nowhere else to go, those specific frustrations they're having, and they need to check in with somebody and resolve symptoms very quickly and then get back out. Great. That's wonderful. That is the role of therapy. I think we need to pull it back and put it in its corner where it belongs. But what do you think might be an answer going forward for the people who are post therapy? What's a good post therapy examination that someone could do, or post therapy approach to improving their life? I want to get better at my social skills. I want to get better in my relationships. I just spent 2 years in therapy resolving a trauma. I don't really want to go back to therapy. Where can I go next? Where would you send someone who does not want to go back to therapy?
I would send them to a coach because, and it depends on what type of coaching they're looking for. I sent, some to spiritual coaches if that's their belief system, for example, mentors, life coaches, for example, relationship coaches, because that helps them get the support they need in a less formal diagnostic based way, right? If that makes sense. And they're getting mentorship in a way that it's meant to be provided because therapy has done its goal and been resolved. And now you're, okay to integrate those skills. So that's what I
I
would
love it.
say.
I love it. That's exactly my answer. I tell people, okay, when do you go? When does an athlete go to therapy? Well, when they're injured and they have a specific injury, and they get that specific injury fully resolved with that therapist. It's an amazing process. Every athlete at some point in their career needs that therapist so that they can get that injury resolved. When an athlete wants to achieve something beyond their skill level, when an athlete wants to break a record, when an athlete wants to do something they don't know how to do, where do they go? They hire a coach, they hire a trainer, they find a mentor, they find someone who can skill train them. If somebody needs full philosophical help with their life, what is the meaning of my life? I had a lot of people come to me as a therapist asking me to help them find meaning because they just felt meaningless. We should not be going to therapists to help us find the meaning in our life. We should be going to personal mentors, maybe a religious figure, maybe a philosophical leader. These people exist for a reason. Therapy is not that. Okay. I am lonely. Sit with me and talk with me once a week. Absolutely not. Let me show you how to find the person that you could be talking to. Let me show you a couple of pieces for how to get out there and socialize. Then get your butt out there and socialize. If you need to come process some of that with me, cool, I'll be that. But maybe you even just need a communications coach. Maybe you need a communications coach who's going to help you do that. Maybe you need a socialization coach. These people exist, right? Occupational therapists are
Yeah.
fantastic in a number of ways. We forget that they exist. Most people are using psychotherapists in place of occupational therapists. Look that up, everybody out there. I recommend you do that. But yeah, 100%. I think coaching's making a big comeback. I think that someone Years ago, someone told me, Adam, when I was a therapist, just purely a therapist, they said, you should get into coaching. I said, yeah, I don't know about that. The field lacks credibility. It's that nobody out there is really like knows what they're doing. There's so many people that are charlatans. And the person said, well, yeah, it is. They said it's the Wild West. You definitely have to be smart about who you're connecting with, but you can find some incredible coaches out there who are going to really train you. And that person talking to me about that, it really kicked me over into wanting to be a coach so that I could go out there and actually do the skill training on the front. I didn't want to work with diagnoses anymore, fixing the same broken arm. I wanted to come out and do the skill training to improve things on the front end. That was the role I needed to follow. So sounds like Jen, are you feeling a little bit of a pull toward the coaching area as well? It sounds like you have that sound to you just a little bit.
I really am, to be quite honest. Only like what you said, I have so many people coming to me questioning their purpose in the world, their existence, the meaning of their life, thinking it's depression, and maybe there's a little bit of that sprinkled in. I'm seeing a lot of the dark night of the soul and like, things of that nature. A lot of philosophy-based discussions coming up, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so limited, but I want to talk more about this with
Yeah.
you. I'm
Yeah.
considering spiritual life coaching maybe one day, to be quite honest, because then I can hone my skills. I'm really eager, I'm passionate.
And that's amazing. I would love that. See that right there. What you just did, beautiful. Okay, I can't work with you in the therapy component on this. Insurance fraud is one of, we shouldn't be doing philosophical life meaning. There's not an insurance code for that. So 100% with you on that. Treating depression, I gotcha. But spiritual life coaching. See what you did there? You separated therapy from coaching. It can be within the same person, you, but different relationship components, different approaches. Even that would be more useful to your clients because, and I love that, hurrah to you, because then they say, okay, therapy has this role, coaching has this role. Now what other coaches are there? See, now they can get excited. They're like, oh, I got a coach that trained me on this. And then you can point them like, okay, what's your next coach? Who's your next coach you're going to go talk to? And they're like, I need communication approaches. You're like, cool, here's a great coach that I can send you to. We can get like Rolodexes of good coaches to shop around. But
Yeah.
that's perfect. That's you showing them to transition out of dependence on you. Beautiful. I love this. I wish every therapist was approaching it like you are, Jen.
I
That's perfect.
appreciate that, Adam.
That's
I,
perfect.
I
Go ahead.
actually want to also maybe do ADHD coaching, actually. I should have probably mentioned that, but I'm actually
See,
passionate to get into that as well.
see, now even ADHD, people are like, no, that's a diagnosis. That needs therapy. No, do you know how many? Do you how many people with ADHD are coming to you, and they're actually pretty high functioning, but they're
Yeah.
struggling. It's holding them back, and it's a bunch of skill training that they really need. It's not even like mental health; it's skill training, right?
I'm seeing that so frequently, myself included, with a late diagnosis, actually. So that's what's
Wow.
actually piquing my interest even more because so many of them
See?
are so high functioning in their life. They just need skills to function, specifically time management. We're time blind. You're
See,
right.
would you go to a therapist for this for your ADHD challenges, or would you go to a skill training coach?
I'm actually, yeah, I've been seeing a coach, here and there. So I would, yeah, say go to coaching.
I love it. I love it. Everyone at home, I want to remind you, this is not a conversation where we're like, all right, let's take therapy out behind the shed and shoot it. This is a conversation of let's put therapy. It has taken too much of a role in our society, and it's starting to smother and hurt all of us. We need to put therapy in back into its corner, and we need to have the range of other human relationships. Again, coaching, mentorship, aunts and uncles. Once upon a time, your aunts and your uncles were this for you. It was amazing what your aunts and uncles could do for you. And I think we've drifted from that pretty hard as a culture, especially here in America. Your grandparents, your cousins, people in your industry that you can go knock on their door and say, hey, you know what? I really want to learn to be better like you. Is there any way I could get on your schedule and just learn from you once a week or something like that? Could we have check-ins? Could I pay you for that? It's amazing how many mentorship relationships begin with just a knock on a door and a question like that. So those are there. Religious connections. A lot of people are having religious awakenings right now, interestingly, across America. Go investigate a religious connections. Be wary of cults, obviously. If they ask for your bank account number, push back. But go ask questions, get in contact with religious leaders, and just say, could I have a meeting with you and just pick your brain? Right, my life feels meaningless. Go sit down with a priest or a pastor or a rabbi or somebody and say, my life feels meaningless. What does your group say about that? What is your answer? And start. You'd be amazed how many of these people are very accessible and honestly a little bit cheaper than therapy. So go make the connection, go have that discussion. Jen, if you could if you could say one last thing of encouragement to everybody out there listening who maybe they're on the fence, they're like, well, I've been with my therapist a long time, or, therapy has failed me. It really wasn't what I was looking for. I need a break. I need something new. If you could give one word of encouragement out there to people, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that's great. I would say, check in with the role of therapy with, what we're learning here, as well as, seeing if it kind of fits those needs essentially, and then explore other opportunities, explore coaching routes, other mentorship forms, family rebuilding relationships. I mean, a lot of people are really having religious awakenings, spiritual awakenings. I'm seeing that as well. Explore other options. Therapy has its place, yes, but it's designed for a specific mechanism, right? A specific tool, a specific role. If that's no longer doing it for you, you're well in that way, explore coaching options and other mentorship options. Build your support out there, because therapy has its value, but it's one piece of the puzzle, right? And there's so many other opportunities out there, is probably what I would leave people with.
That's it. I love that so much. Jen, if people want to find you, do you have any socials you want to give out? Or do you have a website or anything like that? Or do you prefer to remain a little more anonymous? What's good for you?
I would love to be out there a little bit. I'm on Psychology Today. I'm on Therapy Den. I'm on therapist.com. I'm on zencare.com. So, I mean, Jennifer Sobel, licensed mental health
Sobel?
counselor. Yeah,
Can you spell your name for people to remember?
course. Sobol, licensed
Jennifer
mental
Sobel,
health counselor. Yes,
LMHC,
correct. As well as LPC, actually, I might add, licensed
LPC.
professional counselor. I know,
Ooh,
right? And maybe
see,
soon to be
splitting it.
coached one day. Yeah.
See, and this is it. I love your specialties and you're sticking to them and you're doing the appropriate moves. I love that. I love to hear that. Everybody check her out if you're looking for a good therapist or even a recommendation. Check her out and ask for her help. She's here. If you need help finding her, let me know. I can help you locate her. She's pretty cool. Thank you, Jen, so much for sharing time with us here today. It's been a great conversation. I hope that there are many more therapists in the world like you. I think that there are, and I think there need to be. But you're a wonderful one. So thank you for being you.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. Same to you. You've helped my boyfriend and myself so tremendously. So I appreciate you so much. This was an honor.
I love to hear it. Thank you so much. Everybody at home, thank you for being with us. We will see you next time.